ahead and start, and we're running on time. All right, so today I want to talk about a really fun project that I was a part of, and which resulted in some really wonderful education and outreach opportunities. And that is work that has been done with Scott Schuette, who's a scientist at the Pennsylvania Natural Heritage Program, Ryan Folk at the Florida Museum of Natural History at the University of Florida, myself at San Francisco State, and Chris Martine at Bucknell University. And we're really talking about how Twitter helped us find an endangered species. It's really incredible. And of course, this project really didn't shape up without the help of lots of other people. We had collaborations from lots of state parks, and in specific, we're going to be talking about Schuette Cliffs State Park, and this cliff park allowed us the permission to rappel on a 300-foot cliff. We worked with the Pennsylvania Game Commission to really learn how to not have peregrine falcons dive bomb on your face, and we worked with Maryland Conservancy, who gave us some history and background about the plants that historically have grown on the cliffs, as well as we had the help of many Bucknell students to work with us to press plants and do other things associated that came up during the process of this fun project. And of course, we worked with local residents who allowed us access to different parts of the cliff face, and in fact even provided a boat so that we could use that as a launching point for filming this. And for me, this story actually starts in Hawaii. And it's because of Hawaii and its wonderful and beautiful flora that I became enamored with rare and endangered plants. And it really put something inside of me that I really wanted to do something where I could work with rare and endangered plants. And so I was a consultant for 2 years where I got to work intimately with a number of species, but then I found myself in Pennsylvania as a postdoc with Chris Martine, and suddenly I wasn't around a lot of endangered species, or so I thought. And I asked Chris, I was like, okay, so where in Pennsylvania are these rare plants? Can we go see some cool stuff? And he's like, yeah, there's this cliff just down the road, about 10 minutes, that's got a number of rare plants. We should go in the spring. And we did just that. And it turns out, 10 minutes drive south of Bucknell University, there's this cliff face that's 300 feet along the Susquehanna River that has a number of rare species that were really interesting to look at. And we specifically thought that this would be a really wonderful opportunity. During the second year of my postdoc, it happened really towards the end of the second year, where we decided that we were going to do surveys of the cliffs because they haven't been surveyed for a long time. And so all those organizations I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, we were in communication all winter long, trying to figure out how we were going to do this. And it turns out Chris obviously wanted to film this and make the Plants Are Cool 2 series out of it, so we did that as well. The plant species that we focused on was this rare species in Pennsylvania called Corydalis aurea in the Papaveraceae, or Old Familiariaceae. And it, in Pennsylvania, has only one known location, and that's on the Schuette Cliffs. And so we knew it still existed, but we really didn't know its status on these cliffs. So we decided that we would put some ropes and gears on, do some training, and assess its abundance on the cliff face itself. I should mention in the top right, there's a map of its distribution showing that it also does occur outside of Pennsylvania, but within Pennsylvania, there's only one population known of that. And so we did these surveys. It was really wonderful. We had professional film crews fly in and film us. We were doing all the safe things and tying off in the most appropriate ways. And then we dropped down, me and another colleague, down this cliff face. And it was awesome because we're on shale barrens, and I have a bag, and what do I get to do? I get to shove any plant that looks cool that I can't access from the top into a bag and press it once we get back up to the top. I really loved it. But poor Chris wasn't able to do the climbing himself because he had a shoulder injury, and it would have been really bad and unsafe for him to go down there. And So what he did is he was tweeting some of the science as it was happening, kind of like a botany in action. This is what we're doing. And also part of the filming, of course, we had a talk yesterday about Plants Are Cool Too, this YouTube series. This represents this episode is the 10th episode and the most recent episode. And this whole YouTube series is really wonderful, and I think this quote by Chris Martine, who's the host of the series, encapsulates his passion and my shared passion for why we were doing these surveys for rare plants. And so he says, "It is my opinion that one key to stemming the tide of biodiversity loss is producing outreach materials that are effective in generating public interest in what we do and the organisms that we study." Right? That's awesome. I really love that. Okay, so back to the tweeting. So Chris, here he is in a shoulder sling at the top of the cliff waiting for us to bring all the goodies back up. He's cruising around and finds a bee pollinating this nice flower and tweets it on June 9th of 2017. And he's like, "Oh, cool, it's on a Heuchera americana, Shikellamy bluffs." And what actually happened is, what happened was on June 23rd, when we were at Fort Worth at the botany meetings, Ryan Folk happened to be paying attention and said, "Oh wait, that's Heuchera alba. I'm guessing that's somewhere in the south part. It's really quite rare." And Chris tweeted another picture of it that had a better image of the whole plant. He said, "Whoa, really? Well, so far that species isn't known in Pennsylvania," knowing that Ryan Folk is sort of the Heuchera saxifragaceae expert in the United States. And so he said, Chris Martine continues and says, "Oh, paging Mossman 2000, who's Scott Schuette, a scientist at the Pennsylvania Heritage Program." And Ryan definitely says that it's not Heuchera americana, and he, indicating that it's probably Heuchera alba, this rare species. But he also says he knows of another location on iNaturalist that occurs in Pennsylvania, which is really close to the Pennsylvania border with Maryland. And finally, Scott Schuette chimes in. Maybe he walked out of a session from a really cool talk, so he couldn't answer right away. And he says, "Whoa, please, Chris, when you get back to the herbarium, check the specimens, because this is a really important conservation story." And so that's what we did, right? This Twitter exchange that happened because we were sharing knowledge on a Twitter platform, excited and inspired by being at a botany conference, resulted in us going back to the herbarium and finding 4 specimens with collection dates from 1905 to 1949 that were in the Burpee herbarium, identified incorrectly as Heuchera americana or Heuchera pubescens, and they were actually Heuchera alba. And I love this photo. It's from 1912, one of the sites that one of these 4 specimens come from, and that's Gundy's farm. And you can actually see a botany class collecting plants there in 1912 along the railroad track that's there. So we were really thrilled with this, and it was still maybe July by this point, and we realized that there were so many Heuchera species where we were. So this is the thumbnail of the actual YouTube episode, and it's circling how close and how much interaction I had while I was dropping down that cliff face with Heuchera alba. It was everywhere. Literally, it turns out it's the largest population in terms of number of individuals for this taxon anywhere in any of its known locations. And because of this, we had some more ideas about maybe preferred habitats where it could occur. So we did surveys across Pennsylvania. Primarily this was done by Scott Schuette. And you can see, indicated by those orange-yellow crosses at the top in Pennsylvania, that we actually found an additional 7, bringing it up to 8 known populations in Pennsylvania. Its other distribution was never in Pennsylvania. It was in Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia, indicated by the orangish-red circles. And concurrently, the other Heuchera species, which was misidentified in Pennsylvania, is the blue circles of Heuchera pubescens in this case. Okay, that's really awesome. It's because we actually got to climb down there, learn about its habitat, these shale barrens, and look for that in other places across Pennsylvania. And of course, this actually resulted in a publication that was published in Phytokeys, basically a range extension paper for an endangered taxon in April. And we're really thrilled. This is a really fun story. We've got to do some really cool work to find rare plants. And because we were working through Twitter that connected us to Ryan Fulk, a Heuchera expert, we were able to really clearly disentangle the close morphological similarities between these taxa and kind of illustrate why we think these taxa were misidentified and clear up that story. So here you can see we ended up with really nice photo plates, and because Ryan is a very detailed, wonderful artist as well, we had some nice line drawings that are depicted in the publication as well. Okay, fascinating, wonderful work. But of course, that's not where our story ends. We decided that we had a communication plan, and we needed to communicate this so that people could understand how social media really facilitated us finding and working with rare species, how that's working and making our collections and our herbarium collections relevant. And what happened is we actually had interviews with our local newspapers and then with local TV in Pennsylvania, and that was really awesome. And we started getting the ball rolling with this press release that came out with the article concurrently published in Phytokeys. And then we eventually got picked up by a science writer who contacted us and asked us for quotes and more clarifications on the stories. And this is a story published in Quartz that from a science writer, and she is well known, and this was really kind of the tipping point for us. And I love this like tag at the top that says Twitter's sometimes good. But that was just the start. And so of course now we got picked up by IFing Lab Science, and over a month ago we had already 128 shares of this really cool story. And we even ended up being contacted by BBC, and in BBC, all the other 3 authors were interviewed while I was on field work in Australia. And they got to talk about how this Heuchera species was found and share that globally. You know, the reach of BBC is really, really vast. And this is something I want to drive home a little bit more, is that this is essentially a range extension paper for an endangered taxon. It was published in April, and in less than 4 months, there's been 869 unique views of this paper. That's awesome. And I think that, I feel really good about that, getting this information out so that people know it, know this story is really wonderful. And not only that, Phytokeys just published their 100th issue, and in that, they mentioned this as one of the most, one of the top 10 articles that is listed for having the most media interest. And that's awesome. And what's not depicted on this slide is that Chris, in his decision to be really adamant about science communication, 4 of the papers in the top 10, him and I are authors on, right? We really have the opportunity to do this. And I think this can be accessible to you. So if you have any questions, this is my plug, please contact us, because we would love to help communicate science, all of your research, to the broader public in various ways. Okay, and with that, I would just like to say that thanks. I gave some thanks at the very beginning to our collaborators, but also put a little plug in to our Plants Are Cool YouTube series, and you can actually see some of botanists in action hanging on cliffs, picking some